Many of the bad things associated with Muslims are dismissed as culture in the West, but I don't think the vast majority are able to separate culture inspired by Islam and culture separate from Islam. So, of the Islamic nations and cultures that you know, are there any common cultural threads, practices, beliefs, and perceptions that you think can be traced back to Islam? If so, what are they? And are there any that buck the trend? Of those that do buck the trend, do you know why?
Wait, so to understand your question, you're suggesting that among all of the diverse cultures that we see in Islamic countries, can we identify which ones are Islamic? Is that what you're asking?
I'm wondering in what way Islam has influenced,
Right,
some of them, and how and why, because there is this common thing in Western circles of, it's not Islam, it's just culture, you know.
right.
But and some of
So
it might be culture, but it might be culture inspired by Islam.
yeah, so we have to understand what we mean by culture and what we mean by Islamic, right?
Yeah,
So to me, there's two things that when people say culture, they're talking about two different things, and they're so different that we there should probably be two different words for it.
yeah,
So when there's one category A of culture are things like dance, music, calligraphy, architecture, food, fashion, right? These are category A. People refer to this as culture. And then category B is values, way of life,
mm,
moral
yeah,
standards. For category A, I think category A, there's no objective way to judge category A. It's all subjective, and different people have different tastes, and the more diverse, the better. It's fine, right? You could have as much of it as you want, and people could choose whether they want it or not. It's category B in culture that we're usually worried about, but could actually judge as superior and inferior, right? And they are objectively superior culture, or moral, values, inferior ones. And what we're trying to do is the category B culture. We're trying to basically eliminate the inferior ones and make the superior ones dominate everywhere, right?
mm,
So if we're talking about culture and Islam, I'm more concerned about the category B part, not the category A, right?
yeah,
When it comes to Islam, so we have Islamic culture, right? Islamic culture, when it comes to category B, is basically Islamic values and Islamic morality, okay, Islamic standards, way of life, right? I'm not talking about the way the mosque looks. I'm not talking about Quranic calligraphy. I'm not talking about the Sufis dancing. That's category A. I'm talking about the values, the moral standards, the way of life. So that's Islamic culture. And to me, you could determine if something is Islamic or not based on whether it's happening. So, for
mm,
example, something could come from a place where many Muslims live, but the culture is pre-Islamic or even un-Islamic or even anti-Islamic, right? So to me, I determine whether or not it is Islamic or not based on the geography that it's come from, but based on whether or not is there's any connection with it to the Hadith or the Quran, to Muhammad Sunnah or the Quran. If that's the source, I call it Islamic. That's how I
yeah.
identify something as Islamic. It's not based on what Muslims do, because Muslims are influenced by so many different things. It's based on whether or not it comes from the Quran and Hadith, right? So is that a fair categorization in your opinion?
Yeah, I see what you mean. It's like in the UK, we have problems with things like the grooming gangs and things like that, and there has
Right.
been accusations that there is a religious motivation tied to that, and
Right. So
some people are
this is
trying to.
to determine whether or not. So there's two ways to look at it, right? So first of all, you look at it empirically, and then you look at the source material that might influence this type of behavior, right? So if you look at it empirically, you can see like honor killings and those types of behavior that you're mentioning is very common in Muslim communities, no matter what the background is, right? So for example, let's look at honor killing. Is honor killing Islamic? Well, if you look at Islamic communities, regardless of their history, regardless of their ethnicity, regardless of their previous culture or like their own ethnic or historical culture that was not Islamic, you can see that honor killing is very, very common in everywhere that is Islamic. Like it doesn't, if you control for ethnicity, it doesn't seem to be the thing. If you look at their non-Islamic culture, it doesn't seem to be the factor. If you control for everything else, it doesn't seem to be factor. But you can see that the highest places that have the highest amount of honor killing, for example, if you compare Hindus versus Muslims in like India and Pakistan, right? They have the same, like their ancient history is the same. They have the same mix of ethnicities. There are many things about them that are the same, but one of them is mostly Hindu, the other one is Muslim. And you can see the Muslims have more honor killings than the Hindus. So it's just empirically, it just seems to have to do something with Islam. The problem is, like, a Muslim will come tell you, well, there's nothing in scripture, like in Hadith or the Quran, that endorses honor killing, right? And they would have a point, but Islam is still to be blamed. Islam normalizes beating women. Islam normalizes the idea that you have ownership over women. Islam normalizes the idea that the shame associated for sexual misbehavior from the women in your family, that shame belongs to all of the family. So even though Islam doesn't have a command to go kill your daughter if she had sex with somebody that she shouldn't have, it doesn't say that. But the combination of these attitudes towards a woman and the cost associated with the shame coming from a woman in your family misbehaving sexually, it creates an environment where honor killing is more likely. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right. So also, for example, with this grooming gangs, or basically the idea that non-Muslim women are fair game, they're inferior to Muslim women. They're basically, these are non-Muslims. They're supposed to be property. Like Islam teaches all of that, right? Non-Muslim
Mm.
women are women that you could capture in war, and they're supposed to be property. You don't need to be treating them the same way that you treat Muslim women. These all are Islamic. And even if the people who do this don't really follow, like understand or follow Islamic teaching, the fact that that is, this the scripture has an effect into the general, feelings that people in that community have towards certain groups of women. So you don't
Yeah.
have to be an Islamic scholar to have this attitude or have this belief, but the fact that the imam in your mosque believes that and says things like that, and basically also the mosque also have programs for your children, and it just creates a mindset as a base for everything to grow upon, that just take things in that direction. On average, not all Muslims think like that, but the average basically leans towards that type of thinking. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
the effect is indirect. It's not like the Muslim goes and reads the hadith, so like, oh, okay, so I can do this. It doesn't work like that. It's more about the scripture having, it's more indirect. The scripture has an effect on, I mean, the imams or the mosque teachers or the teachers in schools, and they create a base or like a framework. Basically, it's like the soil is rotten, and then what grows in it is rotten as well. You know what I mean? Nothing good grows out of it. It's not like the people follow the scripture word by word, but it just tends to move in that direction.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Next, we have Mazi.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Hope everybody's doing okay. Mr. Netanyahu going to visit the US this week. That would be a perfect surprise attack time. With the Islamic Republic thinking that they're safe till at least the weekend. I was going to say, Armin, I wanted to ask you, with this Khamenei coming out and telling people to come out for the 22nd of Bahman, to come out to the streets, probably giving them free food to come out. Do you think that people would actually come out, or at least in big numbers, because for the support? Because with all this killing that's been going on, I'm sure some of the basic regular folks that even supported the regime, they're probably thinking that if they come out, they could easily get identified by the people that have just lost all the loved ones and everything, and they might have their lives be threatened. You know what I mean? That way, because I'm sure they'd be scared of that. So I think that, I don't know, we might not even see very many show up because, if they do show up, they might have all masks and covered up, I guess.
So actually, before you continue, let me give context to people who might not know what you're talking about. So, guys, Khamenei just came out. He gave a speech, and in that speech, there's this part that he sounds like he's begging people to come out into the streets for the anniversary of Bisodoy Bahman. Bisodoy Bahman is the 22nd of Bahman, which is Bahman is a month on the Persian calendar, which I think it translates to February 11th, if I'm not mistaken, on the Gregorian calendar. So pretty soon, like in 2 days, right? So that is the anniversary of the Islamic Republic's victory over the Pahlavi. And the Islamic Republic basically every year has these rallies where people come and celebrate the Islamic Republic's win. But in this speech that Mozi is referring to, Khamenei sounded like he was begging for people to come out, and he didn't seem like he didn't speak. He wasn't sure that he didn't sound like he was sure people will come. He didn't speak with the level of authority that he usually tries to speak. Moses is asking whether people will come. He thinks that people will come because after the massacre that the Islamic Republic committed, Moses is wondering that maybe even some of the pro-regime people are not going to show up, right? I mean, Moses, you might be correct because, or else Khamenei wouldn't be this concerned, right? This is why it's really, by the way, for other people, you have to understand that this is very important for the Islamic Republic for people to show up in that rally. It's extremely important because right now, Khamenei's main worry is that a lot of people who support the regime might defect because they think that the Islamic Republic is about to collapse. And if a lot of people don't show up in this rally, it's going to confirm that to a lot of people, and more people will defect. So it's very important for the Islamic Republic to show that everything has gone back to normal and they're not going to go anywhere. Because if more people from the regime get convinced that the Islamic Republic is going to fall at some point, they're going to be planning for their own survival, and it's just going to speed up the collapse. So this is crucial for the Islamic Republic to show a lot of people showing up, to show that it's not like the protests that happened in early January. A lot of people might think like a lot of people that demonstrated how to even regime supporters how unpopular the regime is. So they need to now show their numbers to be high as well, to demonstrate to them like we have millions of supporters anyway, so we're not going to go anywhere. So Muslim, to answer your question, I mean, you have a good point, or else he wouldn't be begging for people to show up. However, one thing that you have to also keep in mind is because this is such an important thing for this regime to happen, they're going to be doing anything all the tricks that they have been using in the past 47 years, they're going to go to all of them and try to do 10 times as much to get the people in the streets, right? So they're going to have food, going to all government workers and tell them that it's mandatory that they show up, or else they're going to get punished if they don't show up, right? They're going to empty the schools. They're going to go into the high schools, elementary schools, and and they're going to basically say bring all your students there, and it's going to be mandatory for the students to show up. They're going to bribe people, they're going to punish people, they're going to use a carrot and stick approach. So they're going to basically use all their resources to try to make sure a high number of people show up. So what do you think, by the way, Musi?
Yeah, well, I think you're probably right that there's going to be like higher amounts of security, and they probably are going to entice people to come out. And I also think that'll be really fitting with how these Arab proxies and all these groups always attacking Israel like on their holy days, that it would be so fitting that if they decided to attack them on their big day coming up, it would be fitting. I think it would be like justice served right there. But another thing I was going to
Oh,
ask
but
you
before
was,
before you move on to the other thing, I just want to
sorry.
also say that I wouldn't be surprised if they're gonna bring kebab, and they're going to make sure the smell of meat is going to be filling the streets, because remember, a lot of Iranians haven't been eating meat for a very long time because of the inflation, and filling the streets with the smell of kebab is going to be one of their strategies to get people, like giving free food out there, especially for Iranians who can't afford food right now, is going to be one of their strategies to try to get people to come and join the protest.
And it's all about optics for them. It's like, yeah, let's just try to get as much people out and try to make propaganda to see, oh, look, we have so many people that support us. Like, yeah, it's all a game they've been playing for 47 years. So I wouldn't be surprising that they try everything, you know. You can see how many propaganda videos they have lately of, a defenseless USS Abraham Lincoln there. So we all know, and a lot of people that even when I talk to right inside of Iran, they know that the end is like coming. Like they know that no matter what, that this thing is not going to survive, even if it's going to take more lives, and even if there's no outside help, that it is coming, and it's going to be within a not too long of a period anymore. Do you think that I'm sure that some of the people like in the regime know this too. Like I know that they fill themselves with all this stuff and propaganda. They probably believe what they're saying and maybe not the very closest ones to Khamenei, but I would think that some of the other ones, maybe just one level down, probably understand that it's coming, So what do you think that it would actually take for them to, you know, pack their bags and leave, the sinking ship? Do you think like what is the actual thing that has to happen before they're like, okay, it's gonna be too late for us and the people will get us, you know what I mean? Like it's coming. We know it's coming 6 months down the road. So how long are we gonna wait before we actually take off and
I don't
leave?
I don't think they're convinced that they're going to be toppled. I think if they were convinced, like the ones who are convinced are already making plans for their own security. I think some of the reformers are convinced and they're now trying to position themselves in a way to look like some of them, not all the reformers, but some reformers are positioning themselves to look like they were standing, they had the right position so that maybe people will show mercy when everything falls apart. But I think that the calculation of some of the people with the Islamic Republic right now is that they will just come, like United States and Israel will just come bomb a couple of things, and then they will go back, and we will just have some costs associated with that, but we will recover. And the idea is that at the end of the day, all it takes for us to be in power is just to show the Iranian people that if they come into the streets, we'll just continue to shoot them in the tens of thousands, right? In their opinion, there is really nothing that could stop them from just basically continue to inflict maximum damage to the Iranians inside Iran who want regime change. And their understanding is that you can't do regime change from the air. So you come and bomb different, military bases or government buildings. And for any politicians that you kill, we have other ones who could take their place right away. And the only thing that would take us down is the Iranian people. And so far, it seems very easy to just shoot at unarmed people. So we're good, right? That's their calculation. But the main thing that they need to include in their calculation and therefore be terrified is that their own people are defecting more and more every year. You know what I mean? Like they used to be at, I don't know, 12%. Then they had 12% support. Then they had 6% support. I don't know if they even have 4% support right now. I mean, if we keep going like this, like can you keep staying in power with 1% support at some point? You know what I mean? So there's three elements that they have to take into account. Like external pressure, US and Israel, internal pressure number one, which is the Iranian people wanting to topple the regime, but internal pressure number two, division among themselves, infighting, and people defecting. That I think the third element is what eventually will take them down, and they need to take that. Like if that should be the thing that terrifies them. But right now, a lot of them feel safe because, like, look, even like millions of people showed up in the streets. We shot at them. They're back home now. We could do this forever. Their calculation is we could keep doing this forever.
I don't.
Okay.
But
Okay, sorry. Go ahead. So,
no,
I
last
just
point. Make your last point, but then yeah, go on. Last point. So
okay. Thank you.
thank you, Mazi.
Okay. Next we have Sammy.
Sammy.
Hi, hi again. I'd like to ask you a few questions based on my insight, and that insight is about the liberation of Iran, right? And there's a few things supporting it, right? And I believe the major thing that's supporting the liberation of Iran, because I have researched some facts around it, is the vacuum in energy demands, right? Not in energy demands, but the vacuum in the energy sector, to be exact. And why am I saying so? Because I noticed a few days back that Iran has the second largest natural gas reservoirs, and I believe the main objective of the current US administration is to block the Russian lobby from importing oil and gases, right? In my country, we are seeing that, not just in my country, but in rest of the South Asian countries, which are demanding high amount of natural gases, right? And Europe also, right? Europe is still supplying Russian natural gases. Now, I believe the Trump administration would not deal with the current Islamic regime of Iran when it comes to the fuels, right? I just want to ask whether you see it being a major factor in liberation of Iran. Do you see the lack of natural gases and petroleum products in the current market being a factor for Iran's liberation from Islamic regime?
Okay. So the fact that the Islamic Republic has so much oil and gas has actually been one of the reasons why we have, the Islamic Republic in charge right now. Like, so, because here, let me actually, I don't know what you mean about. Let me just tell you what I think, how this influences oil and gas can contribute to dictatorial regimes staying in power longer. In my opinion, democracy is a natural result of eventually the people having more leverage, more power compared to their government, to their state. So it's basically the nation and the state. If the state is too powerful relative to the nation, then we're more likely to have a dictatorial regime. But if the nation has more power relative to the state, then the state has to be answerable to the nation, and we're more likely to have democracy. And we have three types of power: we have people power, we have economic power, and we have military power, right? And given that in a nation state model, the monopoly of violence belongs to the state, so the nation doesn't have that military power. The people themselves are the source of people power. So that leaves us with economic power. This is why, in a deterministic model, I believe that democracy is a natural result of the people having enough economic leverage for the government to be the main source of government revenue, right? So we turn into a democracy. Like, democracy is a natural thing that eventually happens when state's source of revenue comes mostly from the people, basically giving the money to the state to represent the people. So this is why having such high amount of natural resources delays us getting to that point, because the government just has so much oil and gas. Basically, just money is just coming out of the ground, right? So the state will have more economic leverage power relative to the people. So the people, it's really hard for the people to get to the point where they could actually have any form of economic leverage, because the source of the revenue from the government doesn't come from the people, it comes from the ground, right? This is why it's really hard to get to a democratic model when you have this much oil and gas. So I don't know if you say, has is it the source of our liberation? I actually think that oil and gas is a source, is the reason why we have been in chains for this long. I don't know if that
Uh,
even answers your question, but yeah.
Yeah, but I have a counterpoint to that, because when you see the example of Venezuela, what we are seeing right now is some of the corporates of America controlling the development of petroleum and natural gas in the nation, right? And the way I see it, I see the current US administration, right, the Trump administration, trying to deviate countries like India, China, Indonesia, Thailand, the populous country which takes a lot of fuel from the Russian oil and gas, right? And I see it with Venezuela. Why cannot I see it with Iran? What's your view
I don't
on that?
understand your point that you're making with
Like
regards to Venezuela and Russia. I don't really
like
understand the point.
we see a forced liberation in Venezuela, right, from the U.S. administration. Why
Yeah,
cannot?
but that's not because of the oil. That's the basically the oil actually caused Venezuela to be able to not be a democracy for this long. It actually contributed to that. Now that another country, it required another country come and say like, yeah, you're not doing that. That's, I mean, Venezuela is still not democratic, by the way. So I don't know what your point is.
Yeah, but there was this forced removal of the government here.
Yeah,
Going
but Venezuela hasn't been liberated. Maduro's regime is still in power.
hmm,
And also, even if it does get liberated at some point, then like that's not because of the oil. The oil was the source of revenue for Maduro.
yep.
It gave them the ability to maintain power over the people.
Yep. Yeah, I see it in that manner, but there's this narrative going on. America liberates wherever there is oil and natural gases, whatever the narrative
Well,
is apart.
America wouldn't need to liberate them if the oil and gas didn't cause them to be tyrannies to begin with,
Yeah, yeah, but
right?
but the reason I'm going to that assumption,
Last point, because I want to move on
yeah, yeah,
after
exactly,
this.
exactly. I just want to have a
Sure.
counterpoint here. The reason I'm going to that narrative is because there's this huge demand in fuel, and Iran is sanctioned. Allies of America or the trade partners of America won't buy from Iran. Countries like India, which is like a nation apart from Iran, which has pipelines.
Obviously, the oil and gas has a major reason why United States is interested in this area to begin with. But again, that doesn't negate my point, because you have to dismiss everything that came before it that got us to the point where we have tyranny to begin with, right?
Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah.
agree to this fact. Thank you.
I
Okay,
think
next
some.
is
I
Susanna.
think Samantha. What did Samantha? Okay, Samantha, did you want to add something to this point,
No,
or
mine's is very off topic.
no? Okay. Yeah. Okay, Suzanne.
Hello.
Suzanne.
Um,
Hi.
I was just coming by to share some hopium. Okay, I have
Oh, we need
a
that.
happy, cute story that I thought might be like uplifting to people. So it was funny. The other day I was on Instagram just browsing around, whatever, and I see this girl, this Korean girl, just talking about Iran. And so I watch her videos and it's all very sweet. And she's just like a normal, typical influencer girl. And she stopped like her normal content to talk about Iran. And one of the posts was like her like praying for Iran, and it was all very kind. And then she was immediately getting shit for it. Like people posting like, why aren't you talking about ICE? Why are you talking about this? Why aren't you talking about Palestine? Blah blah blah. And she had such a good like even-headed take. She was like, you don't actually want to know my opinion on these things. You just want me to agree with your opinion on these things. And she said like, oh, a lot of people all are talking about those issues, but I see no one talking about Iran, and I think what's happening to them is pure evil. So this is what I want to talk about. And like, that's okay, blah blah blah. And then people are accusing her of being a Zionist and all this stuff, and her posts are so sweet. She's like, I don't know where you're getting this, like, I just think what's happening to them is wrong. And anyways, so I just see this on Instagram and I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, it's too bad that she's being like they're giving her a hard time for it, blah blah blah. Okay. Then on Saturday, I go to the demonstration in my local community for Iran. And I'm standing there and with my community, whatever, whatever. And then on kind of the outskirts of this demonstration, I see this Korean girl. And I'm like, am I losing my mind? Or is this the same girl I saw on Instagram like literally yesterday? But the area where we do demonstrations, there's also like a heavy Chinese and Korean population that sometimes like pop by and just like look at a curiosity. So I was like, okay, Susanna, like you have to be strategic right now because if you go up and ask this girl if she's the girl from Instagram and it's not, that's going to be like super awkward. So anyways, I follow her and I'm kind of like observing and I'm like, okay, no, she's staying with the demonstration. She's not just moving on. She's like staying and she's like doing stuff. Okay. So I go up and I approach her and I introduce myself and we're talking and I'm like, by the way, did you make a video that kind of went a little bit viral the other day of you praying for Iran? And she was like, yeah, that was me. I was like, oh, what the hell? I would have like never expected that you live here. That's so cool. So I was talking to her and she's so sweet. Like she was just like such a pure-hearted sweetheart. Like this girl didn't know any of the community, like wasn't really talking to anyone, just by herself in the rain. Like the weather was shit. By herself just showed up and so I spent a lot of time talking with her and I was like, "Oh, like let me introduce you to people. Like they'll be so happy that you're here. They'll be so grateful for your support, blah blah blah." And I don't know, just that whole interaction was so kind and uplifting to me because then when I get home, I see that she was posting that she went to the demonstration and she was posting about Reza Pahlavi. And she's like, look, I'm not a geopolitical expert, but like this is what they say that they want, and this is his platform and all this stuff. And she went like full free Iran and all her bio and everything. I need to be friends with this girl. I decided she has no choice. She's my friend now. That whole interaction made me so happy this weekend. So I thought you would like hearing that.
That was beautiful. I really like that. Thank you for doing that. If you weren't there, she would have just been by herself and she wouldn't see. That was amazing that you did that.
She
Oh,
was
that's so
asking me, like, oh,
sweet.
what do you think is going to happen? I was trying to explain to her. I was like, I think what you did is so nice. And I'm sorry that people are giving you shit for it. And I was trying to explain, like, because she's brand new. Like, she doesn't get why people have a
Mm,
negative reaction to her doing this, right?
right.
So I was trying to
Y-
explain, like, this is why people get so triggered by this movement, by this community and what their demands are. But you're doing the right thing. And anyone who's giving you crap is like 99% not going to be Iranian, you know? So yeah.
What's her Instagram?
Oh, let me pull it up. 1 second.
We could show it on screen.
Yeah, she was so nice. I just put it in the chat, but her name is Sarah. And yeah, I just thought it was so cool. Look at she went like full free Iran, like
Oh, that's so sweet. Look at this. Oh, look at this. Free run. Oh
yeah,
my
like
God,
pray
that's
pray
so
with me for
sweet.
Iran.
So her ID is SARIEPARK on Instagram. That's so nice.
And I was like, "Oh my gosh, she really put herself out there into like something she doesn't know a lot about because she just thought it was the right thing to do." And people are like, being mean about it. So I was like, "Oh, I want to show her like a lot of extra love and appreciation."
Well, thank you for sharing that. Thank you. That's so sweet.
Yeah. We all need some hopium, some hopium.
Yeah. Thank you, Susie.
I love that that's Susie's thing, like telling us a joke, coming in to giggle, like making sure we all have like a high in the midst of all of this stuff.
Oh, speaking of, hold on.
Oh my god, this better be a puppy sighting. This better be doggies.
There's
Yeah!
one. Yes, another one.
Yes,
They
your
just
baby
knocked it at the
girls.
door.
She's like the tiny version of my dog.
Oh, really? Yeah.
The hair color, at least, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Okay, next we have Daniel Dahl. Before you go, after that we have Mozzie, and then we have 2 questions for post show. So depending how the next 2 go, just for timing, there you go.
So lately, Bibi, when he was talking on the UN court, he introduced the QR code, right? And apparently, it reached a lot of views on that atrocities video, right? That was on the 7th of October. And maybe a suggestion that maybe the Iranians should do something similar with the same tactics. Maybe not in the UN, maybe in the UN also. Maybe like post the same QR code in protest, like where Tusi was giving his speech on the public when he went on stage, like places like that. And maybe this also will like gain more legitimacy to rid off of this stupid regime. And speaking of like legitimacy, in 2022, when the war in Ukraine started, Ukraine was all over the first like pages of the papers, and now Putin bombs Ukraine, bombed the hell out of it. Actually, the coldest winter that was last year's, and like nobody talks about it. So I believe like the Iranians should work as much as it possible until they're like when they are like relevant on the news, because I see that the period of time where of like it's starting to run out.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. Thank you. Okay.
Next is Mozzie.
Sorry, I wanted to ask something of Armin. I was gonna say, weighing how effective it would be, or how he would think that the idea would be if, for example, the United States knows that it wants to go on a strike of the Islamic Republic and actually makes it clear that they want nothing less than this regime to go. If they make that clear, how effective would it be if they were to say, we're going to give the higher ups in the regime, 24 hours, for example, to surrender, and like, name a few people, like few officials, maybe 5 or 10 of the higher ups or whatever, and say, if they are handed into us, then we're going to give you a free pass to leave the country. But if you don't, within this certain amount of time, we're going to attack. Do you think that would cause enough turmoil to where some of the people in the government would actually turn, like, as in say, you know what, we need to hand them in right now or we're all dead? You know what I mean? Like, kind of cause that kind of a rift in the government itself, to where some will be pushing to hand those people over, or some would be like forced to, like, it would cause a kind of a chaos in there.
That's a good question. Basically, what they did with Saddam, you mean? By the way, guys, if you're not speaking, please close your microphones. So, they did that with Saddam, right? Saddam was basically this, and he refused, and that the rest is history. I think that it makes sense to not go to that step, at least right now, because then it makes sense to right now try to see if you're planning to attack anyways. The best strategy would be to give them some hope that they could survive if they just give a couple of their deterrence capabilities away. So, like, I would basically set a trap. I would trick them into thinking that maybe we're not planning to change the regime. So how about you give us this, and that, and then maybe we won't attack. But by doing that, you're basically just pulling their teeth, a few more of their teeth before you do the attack, right? It's better not to use that method yet. I mean, the thing is that for the regime, a lot of the regime officials, their understanding is that if the regime fall, there's no way that we're going to survive this, given how many Iranians want them dead, right? So they're not just looking at death; they're looking at like death in the worst, in the worst imaginable, right? So they don't. I don't know if they believe that they're going to be surviving. Like, imagine if the regime falls and the people who were involved in massacring the Iranian people to this degree, do you think that the Iranian people are just going to allow, like, how is the United States going to protect them? Like, is the United States going to use its own armed forces to protect these people against the Iranian people? So they're not going to do that. So what happens to them is going to be determined by the Iranian people, and the Iranian people are really, really, really hungry for revenge right now. That's why, in their minds, the Islamic Republic has to survive no matter what. If you give them an ultimatum that either die or give up the regime, they're going to be like, well, if we give up the regime, we're going to die anyway. So let's just, it's going to make them fight even harder. In fact, it might want them to, what we call in Persian, give just zamin sukhta tahvilumon bedem, meaning that if they think that, for some of these regime officials, if they really think that the Islamic Republic is going to collapse and this is inevitable, they might want to take down Iran down with them, meaning that maybe they will, I don't know, bomb, like kill highest number of people before they're gone. Maybe they will drop a chemical bomb inside Iran. Maybe they would basically do a dirty bomb, a radioactive thing. Maybe they will do something really crazy if they like. I don't see them are like, oh, okay. I don't see them just going quietly, like surrendering the Islamic Republic. I think if you basically tell them that we are going to attack if you don't surrender, they might do. These people are like really. Some of these people are like crazy to another level, and they might think, well, if Iran is not going to be Islamic, then it shouldn't be at all. And they're like, oh, if this is infidel country now, the Iranians are the enemy, so we're going to take down as many of them, you know, before we collapse. So you might actually call. I'm not saying this will happen, but I'm just saying that you have to take that into account, because you might actually cause, by saying that, you might be causing like a level of damage to Iranian people and Iran's neighbors that that nobody had like were prepared for. So maybe it actually makes sense to, what we call in Persian, "با پنبه سر بریدن," which means cutting someone's head with cotton. So you basically just slowly go to the final step without making it seem like that's what you're planning for. I think that might be a better strategy. But what do you think?
No, I do agree with what you're saying. I just was thinking about whether like there's enough people that are not on the highest level, that are maybe just one step lower in the regime, that are really to the point where if they know that their lives could be spared somehow, that
Right. Oh,
they would like they would be more
oh.
willing to do something to get away as opposed to stay around and be bombed
So,
to death. You know what I mean?
right. So with those people, I mean, for them, it's not just bomb, but also the wrath of the Iranian people, right? For those people, the strategy that you're suggesting, Princess of Pahlavi has been working on that strategy for a long time right now, right? Basically telling them that time is up, join the people. It's to protect the Iranian people. You use your guns to protect people against the regime, and if you do, you will be forgiven. So that has been a strategy that Princess of Pahlavi has been using for a while now, for those people that you're talking about.
Yeah. So, like, if they made an announcement saying you send these people and you have a free passage to get out of the country, for example, but after that
I
period's
mean,
over, nobody's gonna leave.
they don't need to get out of the country, because if there are people that are not the higher ups that they start protecting the people, Princess of Pahlavi has given them the guarantee that they could even work within the regime, they could stay and they will be forgiven. I mean, I don't know how reasonable that is after the massacre that they just committed, but that's what the deal was, at least before this massacre.
Yeah. And that's like I was saying, yeah, that's true. And that's like coming to defecting to the other side sort of thing. But let's just say these
Yeah.
people are too coward to do that, giving them the way to actually leave the
Leave.
country. And so at least they're not fighting against the people.